In 1990, the youngest Wallace brother, Kenny, decided to follow in his older brother's footsteps and become a NASCAR Cup Series driver. It was a year after his oldest brother, Rusty, became the Cup champion. Now, growing up in the shadows of his brothers wasn't always easy, but Kenny found a way to chase his dream.
Checkered flag for Kenny Wallace.
Over 900 starts and 25 years in NASCAR, between what was then the Busch Series and the Cup Series combined, Kenny did find success. He was always a fan favorite, and thanks to his energetic and positive personality, once he hung up the helmet, he landed a job in TV for Fox. Kenny is fully retired now, but still fueling that passion. Here's Kenny Wallace. I am so excited to welcome in this next guest. He was a member in the NASCAR community for over 25 years in the Xfinity Series, Cup Series, but you know him and love him from his work on television as well. Mr. Kenny Wallace. Kenny, it's so good to see you.
Jamie, I'm so honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Kenny, I see you're at the race shop, so that's good news. We know people are getting back to work. Racing is starting to happen again. But how have you and your family, your grandbabies, all been dealing with this quarantine?
Well, it's been rough on all of us. You know, my wife, Kim, she's beautiful, but she's got a little diabetes, so she's just scared to death to go down the driveway. I feel so bad for her. You know, it aggravates me, Jamie, for her because I love my wife so much. I'm a mess, you know, because I'm a people person, you know, I'm used to hanging around people. And, you know, Jamie, I had somebody ask me the other day, they said, well, what would you be doing anyway? And I said, I would be watching my St. Louis Cardinals play at Busch Stadium. I would most likely be watching my Blues in a playoff run for the Stanley Cup. I love movie theaters. I like going to eat. And I like racing. So I'm hanging in there because my dear friend Kenny Schrader has been taking me racing with him in Dakota and Oklahoma. So we're doing the best we can.
Well, Kenny, you are, like you said, such a people person. And I swear social media was meant for people like you. You're so good. You're very kind, but you also don't hold back on your opinions. How would you describe your relationship with social media?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this because I struggle with this. You know, Jamie, I love it when everything's going good. and then I don't like it when people have mean opinion that, you know, very opinionated, when they're very mean. I've come so close so many times to literally getting rid of the apps because I look at social media as a way of, you know, like a diary, you know, like I'm sharing what I'm doing. And, you know, it's been rough always to be on social media, but this coronavirus has brought out the worst in everybody. So my wife, literally, her nostrils were flaring. She looked at me, she goes, you will stay away from politics from now on. That is not you, Kenny Wallace. So I listened to her, and now I don't talk politics anymore, and that has made it a lot better for me.
Yeah, but it is nice, though, for your fans, Kenny, that have been around and followed your career to get to interact with you. And speaking of that, you were so good on television. And I'm so thankful I got to work with you at Fox for a few years. But it's been over a year now since you hung up the microphone, Kenny. What has it been like not racing, not going to the track, and not doing TV every week?
Well, you know, I like to doing TV, just like what you're doing. I love to doing the TV part. You know, I'm 56 and I found myself getting tired of the process. You know, it was, you know, go to the airport, get on the airplane, get on the bus, the shuttle to get my rental car, check into the hotel room. And the worst part was being by myself. You know, when I was young and my wife was with me, you know, it was all good. But then my wife quit going, you know, because I just started doing TV only. It was a lot of fun for me, Jamie, when I raced my race car and did TV. When I was able to mix it together, it was just so much fun. And I tell everybody that if I could get on a helicopter and go straight to the racetrack, I would still be doing it. And, so from that standpoint, I don't miss the traveling at all. As a matter of fact, I despise the airports, the hotel rooms by myself. I was very lonely. I was getting depressed. And, I met with Steve Craddock, our boss, and of course, Jacob Ullman. And I said, you all have been wonderful to me, but you ain't going to believe this. I don't want to do this anymore, So it's been different, but, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm not saying this just because. I do not miss it at all anymore. I love my racing. I love my grandbabies. And TV was wonderful for me, Jamie. It saved my career. It really did. TV was one of the best things that's ever happened in my life. But when you get older like me, I just don't like that road life.
When people listen to you, you do have such a passion for racing. You can see it and hear it, and just when you open your mouth. But when you step away like that, I mean, what does it take to fulfill that desire, that passion that you had every single week, and not be able to talk about it? I know you still race a little bit, but how do you make that transition?
The first year, it's kind of funny. My very first year, which was last year, I have a dear friend, high school friend named Lauren Wright. And Lauren said to me, he says, it's got to be pretty difficult on you, Herm, which is my nickname. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you don't have anybody, you don't have no responsibilities, you're not working for a living. He goes, probably going to take you a little time to find yourself. I looked at him, and it was such a mature, diagnosis of me. It did take me 1 year to go, what? This is crazy. I'm used to Steve Craddock or Jacob Ullman or my producers, and I'm used to being kind of told what to do a little bit. You need to be here, you need to be ready, you need to be prepared. What are you going to ask? And it was very strange not having like a leader or a boss tell me what to do. And now I'm okay. And the reason I'm okay is because I kind of reverted back to 25 years ago, where I'm a fabricator now. Years ago, remember my first job in NASCAR, I was a crew chief in 1984. So what has taken place of TV is the process of coming to this race shop every morning and working on my race cars and preparing them. And, I race 70 dirt races a year, and I truly love it. It gives me something to do.
Amazing. Kenny, when was the first time you had that inkling that you thought, I'm going to be a race car driver? I want to do that.
That's crazy. Do you know I remember that? I truly do. It was, we were in Pensacola, Florida, and we were in a rental car, and it had rained for the Snowball Derby. And in the back seat was my brother, Rusty Wallace, and Mark Martin. And we were having fun, and they said, let Herman drive. And we were running around the racetrack. They had all the passenger cars on the track drying the racetrack out. And I remember either Mark Martin or my brother Rusty saying, Herman's going to be a race car driver. And I'm like, I am. Never forget it. And it was hard for me to become a race car driver because I believe I was born in the era, you're young, Jamie, but, there was a time when we had gas shortages, in the United States, back in the 70s. And my dad, Russ, he says, we don't got no money for you to be a race car driver, and I was like, oh, so it was crazy, Jamie. Like I said, I was a crew chief in Cup in 84. I helped my brothers, and I didn't start racing until I was 22. And I was lucky. I had a local businessman here that helped my brother Rusty, and he said, Herman, I'll help you out. And man, it's crazy how I got to where I am right now, but there was not a manual, not a handbook, and I made it just from knowing everybody.
Kenny, that is so crazy. I did not realize that you were so much older when you started. And obviously I got to know your brother Rusty and Mike. I covered Mike for a while, but I worked with Rusty at ESPN for many, many years. And I just loved the dynamic. You're just the sweetest brother. You're the little brother to two guys who were very competitive and competed at the top level in the sport. Your brother Rusty, of course, becoming the 1989 champion. But what was it like being the younger brother, starting so late and coming up, I guess you could say, under the shadow of them?
Yeah, that's all true. My dad, Russ, was great. So my dad was just incredibly talented. You know, I think dad won around 400 local short track races, never really did it for a living. But, we grew up redneck like the Clampetts, Rusty, Mike, me, we were always in the garage working on the race car. And it's kind of the only life we knew growing up. My mom, she had a little tomboy in her. She ran powder puff races. And, I don't know why, but, I can be mean. I can. But for the most part, I want everybody to get along. I don't know where that comes from. My mom says it's from her uncle. But I just love Rusty. I love Mike. There's times that I, get upset with them, but I know the reason the way they are. And when I see Rusty act up, I'm like, I don't want to do that. But it's like Rusty. He's very self-centered because great athletes are like that. Great athletes, Jamie, they're focused, and we are all in their way. Mm-hmm. So I realized that Rusty was a good soul, but he knew where he was going, and we were all in his way. And if you weren't on his bus, get off. And I learned that, and he hurt my feelings a lot, but I realized how great he was, and I knew he loved me because he did a lot of good for me. And so it was easy. To answer your question is this: it was hard for me to be the little brother. Then it became easier once I learned psychology a little bit. So that's really the way it is. It was
survival, hard, right?
And then it got better.
Wow. So that makes me wonder, you won in the Xfinity Series. What was your first win like, just knowing what you went through to get there?
Oh my God, it was unbelievable. It was 1991, Volusia. It was asphalt back then. It was big. All the greats were there, Bobby Labonte and Rob Moroso and all these legendary names. And, I remember when I was in the Busch Series, that was the second biggest form of motorsports. My first win was at the time on TNT, which was big, and now basically it's a Nashville network, and won that race. And it was my second year, and I gave my wife a hug, and I said to her, it's finally over. And I'll never forget a reporter saying, "What did you mean by that?" And I said, well, the pressure of, can I win at a high level, is finally over. And then, we went on to win a total of 9, and, we were competitive. We weren't great. I say Jeff Gordon's an A+, and I'm a B, and that's fine. That's fine because, it's very hard to be a Jeff Gordon.
Kenny, 26 years just about you committed your life to that sport, and your wife, Kim, that you talk about, you guys have been married, I believe, about the same amount of time. How did you guys withstand all that? And how do you keep that passion for racing for so long when you're not necessarily, knocking the doors off and winning all the time and winning championships, but you were a lifer?
It was the worst thing I ever went through in my life. I wouldn't want to ever do it again. Now that I'm of age now, and I look back on my life in Charlotte, North Carolina, they were some of the most miserable times of my life. And here's why. I'll never forget the man that married me and my wife. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to be a race car driver." And he said, "Oh, be careful. Competition will kill you." And, once I got to the big time, which was NASCAR, the first 3 years were wonderful. Because 89, 90, 91 in the Xfinity Series, it was called Busch back then. It was great because I was really competitive. always in the top 5. To this day, when I look back on my stats, like 170 top 10s. I mean, that's a lot. But then when I got to Cup, it was just the God's worst for me. It was so hard for me. Had just that much success. And, that's one reason I left Charlotte is it was very toxic for me. It was very bad memories. It wasn't till lately that I put my NASCAR trophies up because the Cup career was so hard on me. It was because I didn't get what I wanted. It was brutal. So my marriage, it lasted the test of time because she would just stare at me. And I'd tell her, I said, well, say something. And she'd say, well, what do you want me to say, honey? And I'm like, damn it, just make me feel better. And then we'd have discussions and she'd say, I don't know what to say. Because I married a wife that doesn't have a competitive bone in her body. Opposites attract. I'm crazy and hyper. He's low-key. I once asked my wife, Jamie, I said, honey, why'd you marry me? She said, because you're exciting. I said, well, I'll be damned.
That is so precious. But now, I mean, 3 daughters too, Kenny. 3 daughters that you guys were able to raise while you're racing and chasing the dream across the country. I mean, granted, she's a godsend for doing it, but how difficult was that? And now that you get to share so much time with your daughters, what are some of those memories maybe?
Well, there's no doubt Kim raised them. My job was to be honest with them all the time. I seen an interview Madonna did with Larry King one time, and Larry King asked Madonna, said, how are you going to raise your child lords? And she says, well, I'm going to be honest with them because I don't want them getting information anywhere else. So, my job was strange. As embarrassing as it sounds, my job was to teach my kids about sex. And I told Stevie Waltrip and Daryl Waltrip, and oh my God, they just got the biggest kick out of it. So my job with my kids was to be so real with them. Yeah. And, they never made a big deal about sex. They never made a big deal about cussing because I was so in their face with it, be careful. But Kim was the one that did all the disciplining. But I was the one also that said, hey, come here. I said, I'm writing a check. Do you know what a check is? And my kids would start getting older. I say, here's the deal. If you ever write a bad check, I'm going to be real upset with you. So, I mean, I did like the things that were really brutally hard. That was my job. But there's no way the kids turn out as good as they do without their mom. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So Kenny, you mentioned the eras that you raced in. Tell me some of the nitty gritty. I know working with you for a few years, you've got dirt on everybody, but what would you say is like an era or guys that you were racing against that was the most fun, the best memories that you have?
Well, I have a lot of great memories. My nemesis was Bobby Labonte. We were both fabricators. We both worked on race cars, and we both started racing kind of at the same time. Bobby got the best of me. We were, nip and nip, and then all of a sudden, I'm leading the championship in 1991, and I have a horrible wreck at Loudon, and I lose the championship. Now I'm going to win it. Got like a 190-point lead. Then I can't run Rockingham, and it was a brutal blow to me. But in that era, I came up. Bobby Labonte is that, in me. You know what I mean? I love him to death. But I'll never forget so many times that I thought Bobby was this straight-laced guy. And, he calls me up one day while we're competing. And he says, Herm, you want to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert with me? And I'm going to tell you what, it floored me. I think I could have went, but I made an excuse because I was blindsided. That was a question I should have asked Bobby, because I just didn't see that coming out of Bobby. And lo and behold, the more time went on, I realized that Bobby has dry humor. Yeah. He's full of love and passion, but he just doesn't show it. I'll never forget this one time at Dover Speedway. I'm on pit wall and I'm with Rick Mast on pit lane. And I'm like, oh my God, my career's going to be over. My car's not running good. And I'm just devastated because one practice session, my car's not running good. Rick Mast puts his arm around me and he says, you going to do this a long time? I said, yeah, this is my career. He says, you better calm down. You better take it easy. You're going to have a heart attack. I looked at him and I thought, he's right. This is just one, small moment of my career. So to this day, I carry that with me the rest of my life. Rick Mast saying, calm down. This is just one moment. So, I'll never forget Rick, and I owe him for that.
Sometimes we feel like it's the end of the world, right? You're only as good as your last race, your last broadcast. And then the sun comes up the next day and everything changes.
Oh, Jamie, you're so right. I mean, there's so many times I've done TV where I'm like, we go to commercial break. I'm like, oh my God, that was horrible. And Johnny Roberts would be there. He goes, Kenny Wallace, when you look at it on replay, it's just fine. Don't worry. And, I know you're a perfectionist too. We share that in common. We're just never good enough. And
yeah,
to this day, I kind of carry that with me because you and I are competitors.
Yes, for sure. I think that's why we get along and respect each other so much, right?
Yeah, but I don't work out as good as you. You are a badass. You stay in good shape. I admire you. I wished I could be as good as you. You set a great example for everybody out there with your physical fitness.
Thanks, Kenny. Well, I admire you for being able to say your opinion out there. You kind of say what a lot of us wish we could say sometimes. And that's not easy to do.
It is. Sometimes I don't know why I say it. It's just something in me. I don't know if it's because I'm a third child. I don't know if it's because I seek attention all the time. But it's crazy because there's times I want to be by myself.
Yeah.
There's times I don't want nobody around me. I need me time because I wear me out.
Fully pinned and then you crash hard.
Yes. Just like an energy drink.
Well, speaking of energy, Kenny, you became a grandfather. And what do you have, 4 grandbabies now?
4. It's wonderful.
What has it been like just being able to spend that time with them now being home?
Everything everybody says about grandbabies is true. You spend all your time raising your own children, but you're a nervous wreck because you want to make sure they turn out good. And then all of a sudden, when you realize your kids are okay and the grandbabies come, oh, it's like Christmas. They just melt my heart. I mean, it's the only thing in my life. Like when my grandbabies walk in the door, I just go to the ground right away so I can get down on their level. And that is probably the hardest thing for me to do is stop for other people because I'm so hyper. They calm me down.
Oh, I love that. Well, one more question for you, Kenny. It got me thinking when you were talking about your brothers and growing up around them and your differences in personalities. Now that the 3 of you aren't competing in NASCAR now, what is your relationship like?
Way better. Way better. Rusty is way different. He's much more subdued, much calmer. I love him a lot more right now. Like I said, when he was in competitor, he was tough to be around. My brother Mike, the same way. Mike was kind of always the same, but I have an incredible relationship with my brothers. I love them more than anything in life. They're my family. Rusty and Mike helped me so much. I mean, there's no doubt. I would have never made it to NASCAR without Rusty. Rusty's the one that opened the doors up. And Mike was there for me in my most trying times. My brother Mike let me use his shop when I got my very first race car. So, whatever they need from me, I always tease Rusty. I said, brother, I think I owe you about $3 million. But our relationship has always been okay, but now it's way better now that, the competition is over.
Well, I know there's a lot of people they love the Wallace brothers, love Kenny Wallace. So Kenny, thank you so much for coming on the show and best of luck with your racing. I can't believe how much you're still racing, by the way.
I have to race just because it gives me something to do. I love the process, Jamie. And I like being on the road, you know, on my terms, stopping at the truck stops. You know, I know what I got in control there. So I appreciate being on your show. I've loved it. You've had some great guests, and I'm honored to be on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kenny.